Welcome to Unleash Podcast. Our mission is to equip and inspire emerging leaders to take holistic approaches to lead themselves, their family, and the community. In this podcast, we will bring in expert insights to enrich your leadership journey. We are so glad you're tuning in, and let's unleash your leadership potentials.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Unleash Podcast. And today we have a very special guest joining us from Virginia. His name is Robert McFarland. And Robert and I met probably 2 years ago, right? We were in Philadelphia at Business as Mission Conference. It's a conference that I attend every year. And then during the conference, I heard about Robert's speech, but also we got to talk, and he actually gave me one of his books. It's related to this subject. And as our audience, as we grow as a leader in our personal journey, but also we want to help leaders to become a better leader in our organization, in our community, and whatever area that we serve with. I do believe Robert, his book and his research has quite a bit of finding that is going to be helpful to you on your leadership growth journey. And also today we have a very special person with us as well. Her name is Namouny. She's joining us from Minneapolis, and she's very passionate about entrepreneurship and business, and also female leadership. As a Unleash team, we're just so excited to have her as a part of the team, and welcome both of you.
Yeah, happy
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Robert, I'm gonna start the conversation with the first question. So just starting, just tell us about yourself a little bit and your background. What led you to write these topics? The topics like, being the best boss and being the best employee, and what the expectation vice versa.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of research. I really always liked what research could tell us, because I believe that when we do research, we end up learning more about ourselves, and we learn more about other things and other organizations. And so it helps us to be able to be better at what we are when we use research as a foundation. Also, just as a person of faith, I find it very helpful when I can have that research also confirm the things that I believe. And so therefore, I find it very interesting that the two in these books actually come together very well, that the research really confirms the things that from a faith perspective. And so that, I think, is foundational in terms of why these books really resonate with me, and why they kind of were so important for me to write. The first book is, as you know, Dear Boss, What Your Employees Wish You Knew. And then as part of that same research that I did, I kind of did a flip side and did Dear Employee, What Your Boss Wishes You Knew. And so these are research-based in terms of what do bosses and what do employees really expect, what they want out of the reciprocal relationship there. And so I think it's very interesting for us to be able to use that as a way for us to be able to become better, and using that research to improve ourselves and how we do things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you did research
Yes.
to come up with these books. So could you tell us a little bit more about the method, how you went about with the research, and then how that actually translated into the book?
Yeah. In terms of the research that I had done, I commissioned a professional research firm to conduct the data for me. And so what they did is they went out to nearly 600 people around the country, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic status, different regions of the country, different industries in which they work. And so and really asked two main questions. For those who were employees, asked, what's the one thing you wish your boss knew that they might not already know? And then for those who were bosses, to say, hey, what's the one thing you wish your employees knew that they might not already know? And so just very interesting results from this that we were able to take away from this, because it was open-ended. It was not they didn't select from a list. They instead had to give what's the most important thing on the top of the mind thing. And so that's always interesting in terms of figuring out what is on the top of mind for most people.
Wow. Were there any surprises from that research?
Yes. As a matter of fact, what I thought was very interesting in terms of especially what employees wish their bosses knew was that the things that really popped in that were things like appreciation and communication and management and morale. And those were the kind of things that really popped as themes from that. Those are the four major themes that popped. And so that, and there was a some that didn't reply and some that that said something other than that, but that was only like 4% that said something other than those 4 major themes. But notice what's not on that list.
Money.
Is it money? Exactly. Compensation was not on that list. And that's what everybody figures is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And remember, this is top of mind. I didn't give them a list to choose from. So these are the things that are most important to them. A fraction of that 4% said compensation. So this is what employees are really concerned about. They are not as concerned about pay as we think they are. So I think that was definitely a surprise that we took out of this. So
yeah, isn't there like a good I think there's a common saying, maybe it was Maxwell, about how people won't listen until they know you care. So how about the center of everything is really about, of leadership is really about showing that you care.
Absolutely.
And that's really how you influence people.
You're
so
exactly
that's
right.
Really, yeah, and that also supports that notion too. So it's actually it's cool.
Yeah.
That was the result.
That's right. And so really when it comes down to it, we need to be treating others the way we want to be treated. And so that was really a thing that, and that is the golden rule. And we see that in the Bible. We see that in almost every other major religion. And so that is something that that resonates with our personal experience and just as humans. And so that from that, we're able to take this business concept that we should apply in the business construct.
Yeah. Just looking at what's going on right now, one of the main complaints come out to leaders, and I think across generations, even especially millennials, the generation of the largest workforce, are presenting the issues that, hey, leaders don't have empathies. We don't have empathies and care and understanding towards other people, including the younger generations. So I think your research really kind of echoes that, and it's pretty cool, that finding. So I have another question for you, Robert. Most of our audience who are listening to our podcast are some are young professionals, student leaders, business and non-for-profit leaders. Some are even church leaders. We all have leadership role. It doesn't matter size of the organization, nature of the business, nature of the organization. So when leading people, I do believe, personally, I lead my own organization. I know the biggest struggle is not your mission and vision. A lot of times it's how you execute the mission vision, and your leadership capacity is the one determined. Are you able to accomplish your mission and vision? So based on your research and also your finding writing the book, what are some advices or that you can give to these leaders that as our audience to become a better leader to the people that they lead?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing for somebody who is maybe a new leader, or maybe even someone who's been a leader for a long time, the most fundamental thing that I suggest that they really consider is their own leadership of themselves. Is that how to lead yourself is crucial before you can really learn how to lead somebody else. That if we are not self-aware where we're coming from, if we're not aware of the way that of our actions and how they impact other people, if we're not aware in terms of the words that we say and how they impact other people, or for that matter, the thoughts that we think about other people, that we have to really be aware of those things and what's going on inside our own head before we can really learn how to lead other people. Because we can't believe everything we think. We can't believe everything we think. And we have to be thinking about what we're thinking about. So we need to make sure that we are understanding what's going on in our own heads, that we're self-aware of ourselves in terms of our own failings, our own shortcomings, our own biases. I mean, that's crucial for us to really understand that, because we have to understand how we relate to other people and realize we may not have it right. We may not be looking at things correctly. The Nobel Prize winner in economics, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, said that we know far less about ourselves than we feel we do. And he's a whole lot smarter guy than I am. So I'm going to quote him on that, saying that we know far less about ourselves than we feel we do. So having that kind of self-awareness as a beginning leader, or even an experienced leader, is so crucial in terms of having the impact that we want to have.
That's a good point there, Robert. I was actually recently reading something on self-leadership, and I think I stumbled upon a good quote from Socrates a Greek philosopher, and he said something around, I might be misquoting the whole thing, but he said, you are unable to lead others without first leading yourself. Exactly. And that pretty much sums up this whole self-leadership point. So I'm actually curious, we do talk about leaders as people in positions of power, with people to tell what to do, what not. What about those that are just employees, right? And I know you've written a book for employees specifically, and telling them what their bosses wish they knew. So how did that contrast with your first book? What were the differences? And then again, on that topic of self-leadership, I do, from my standpoint, I do believe that you lead even if you don't have that title of boss, or you don't have that title of manager. So for employees, where does that self-leadership come in that regard?
Absolutely. Yeah, in terms of the books that I wrote, I mean, Dear Boss and Dear Employee, I mean, it differs in terms of the perspective that you have, in terms of the fact that how you lead yourself is going to have an impact on everybody else, but also in terms of not just the same principles apply, the words you say, the thoughts you have, the actions you do, not just in terms of leading yourself, but also how that it has impact on other people, realizing that there are ripple effects for everything that we do. That's really important for us to consider. But also in terms of the concept of leadership, I mean, what is leadership? I mean, really, to be able to understand the word in terms of what it really is to do, it's really about influence. And so whether you have a title, as you said, of actually somebody who is an official leader, you have influence. I mean, we have influence over those in our circle of influence. I mean, those even in our own homes, our families, we have influence there. I mean, we've heard it said that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. I mean, so there's influence that we can have even inside the home. But then the people that we come across with, even if you don't have a title per se, the attitude that we bring to work is huge. That's really a powerful statement about ourselves in terms of the attitude that we decide to have, even if we don't have a prestigious title, because that's the thing that's going to be able to put you in positions where you do have the title. So starting off with the right attitude about myself and about the influence that I can have will eventually give the kind of influence where you have the fancy title and the authority to be able to do things like that.
Yeah.
And did that come directly from your findings? Sorry.
That's about a research a lot, maybe not necessarily the actual details from the research, but that's also something you see in a lot of different business literature and the like. I can't say that's necessarily terribly original, but I think that whole concept of really being willing to dig deep and be the person that we need to be in terms of the self-leadership to be able to then influence other people is crucial.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of times, I look at it as like a lot of times, we want an employee to perform. But performance is not only just performance alone. It's I look at even in my own team. I've been learning. Hey, you cannot just expect performance if their leadership area don't grow. The leadership area is the part that you are not really paying them, but that's what really makes the performance enhance, but also build up the culture in the team. And that's just so crucial. And I'm so glad you're also touching that area as well. So next question I have for you, Robert, is what are some main challenges, in your opinion, in companies or organizations that company, have a purpose, but then, you have, in order to get to purpose, you have some, values you set together, but then those values are, how do you make it actionable, instead of just put it there on the wall, and what does it make it actionable to employees and including the boss themselves?
Yeah, let me dive a little deep before I start answering that question. In terms of a purpose and values, those are important foundations for having our organizations. And I say there's 5 major things that we need to have as foundations for our organization. First of all, it's our mission, was what we do. And then it is the customer, who we serve. And then it's the vision in terms of where we're going. Then it's the values in terms of how we do what we do. And then finally, it's purpose in terms of why we do what we do. So all those are very important. Now, in terms of the values and purpose, those are really crucial because what they do is they help provide culture. The vision and the values and purpose, they really provide culture for our organization in terms of what are the expectations for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the values, we need to make sure that we have an understanding of what are those core values that we're going to abide by. They have to be written down and in order for us to be able to live by them and to create the culture that we want to have. And same thing with a purpose. We have to understand why are we here? And don't tell me it's to make money. That's just a byproduct of what we do. That is not, so we make money as a result of our purpose. So, and I think that today, as I think you alluded to this earlier, Bella, who is the fact that we've had major issues in terms of people feeling disconnected from the workplace and there's no empathy. But having that purpose, understanding why you're here, what's the value that you get to bring and how you can pull that out of other people and make them the best they can be. That's a really powerful thing for us to understand. And then having that value and that purpose defined, but it's a really three-part process in terms of that definition. Is first of all, it's being intentional. I mean, we have to make sure that we are being intentional in terms of creating the values and in the purpose, so that we understand what are we trying to do. And then secondly is having clarity, being clear, making sure you're defining those values. Everybody knows what they look like in action, and same thing with your purpose, be able to actualize that. And then in terms of and then the final thing is really about being consistent, making sure that you're doing this again and again and again and again, making sure that that's coming through in terms of the kind of things that you do. So I find that those three parts are really crucial for us to do that. I don't want to go on too long-winded here, but I know you did ask another point there about how do you actualize that? How do you actually put that into practice? I know that it's first of all, you need to be it's intentionality and clarity and consistency to be able to create that kind of thing. But within that, there's 4 strategies that we need to be pursuing to be able to create that kind of culture. First is really being able to communicate that. So once we have the definition in our heads and being able to understand, intentionality and clarity and consistency, once we have that in our heads, then we can be able to communicate this, say it verbally in terms of what our expectations are. The second part of that really is demonstrating that and living it, making sure that what I do is supporting all of those things that we say that are important in terms of intentionality, clarity, consistency. The next thing is really celebrating that, making sure that we include it in the different kinds of processes that we do and the different kinds of meetings that we have and the way that we conduct ourselves as a corporate organization when we come together for meetings. That's important as well when we celebrate that. And the fourth thing is really about curating, when we capture stories about this in action, when we see the things that are important done by other employees, that we can then give them a shout out and say, hey, that's a good job. That's what we're talking about when we say the kind of culture we want to create. And so in terms of communicating and demonstrating and celebrating and curating, those things together create all 4 of those strategies create a very powerful culture where it's reinforced again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. So. Those 4 answers that you just had, it sounds like they're the direct answers to the 4 problems or issues that employees brought up with their during those surveys to their boss. Am I correct to think that if I think about appreciation and then being able to actually care and shout out to those specific employees and let them know that they're being appreciated, am I wrong to think that those are the kind of the answers to those challenges that the employees are bringing up?
Actually, they kind of address both books in terms of the answers that they gave in terms of how to be able to create strategies to create the culture. But if you're looking about what the answers were in terms of the things that people wanted to have in the organizations, when employees want their bosses to know is they want to have them address the issues of appreciation and morale and management and communication, and the answers really are the things of tenderness, to address the issue of appreciation. I know that's a funny word to use in a business context, but tenderness is really about treating other people the way we want to be treated. I mean, that's really kind of a basic thing. It's but then team is the next one. So it's tenderness, and then team. Team is really addressing the issue of morale and making sure that we are functioning as a team, that we're creating the kind of morale that we want to have, and really going out of our way to make sure that we are demonstrating that and creating that kind of esprit de corps. The fourth is about trust. is creating trust, making sure that our employees are able to trust us as managers, and so that they realize that we have their best interest at heart. And then finally, it's about transparency, addressing the issue of communication and making sure that we have that we're transparent. We're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to be forthcoming with information and making sure that information flow is good back and forth. So between tenderness, team, trust, and transparency, those are the four things that really addressed what the employees wanted their bosses to know. And yes, I'm a consultant, so everything has to start with the same letter. So it's a rule. So
I would think, kindness instead of tenderness, but you have to come with
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. It doesn't start with T. So,
yeah, go ahead, Namon.
Sorry, just on a note on the tenderness. So when you do show care for employees, I think there is that component of purpose. Well, of course, it's in the morale piece too, but also understanding the employees' purposes as well. Like, what do each of these individuals, are my employees self-aware, or do they understand why they work? And I think that would be sort of the backbone for how they'd be happier at the workplace, and how you would grow that tenderness or show that tenderness and that care for those specific employees. So it's cool that all these 4 items that you just brought up directly do relate to the power of purpose, as you mentioned. I like that quote that I think I read from your website, where you talk about how organizations are stunted in growth because they're not taking advantage of the power of their purpose. So really connecting these items, these action items that leaders can take away with them, so they can make sure that they are cultivating their purpose and making sure that that's ingrained in everything that they do. But yeah, I just thought that was cool. I wanted to highlight that point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I the whole thing about purpose, I think, is very important for us to realize that especially the millennials right now. Let's talk about the millennials here. We have so many people complain about millennials, about this, that, or the other, and I'm like, look, you're totally getting it wrong. Millennials are doing everybody a favor. I mean, because they are talking about, hey, why should I work for you? Why should I bother to trade my time for working for you? Give me what's your purpose? What's the reason why you're here? And they're doing everybody a favor, because what we're going to do is we're going to have a much more intentional marketplace of ideas. We're going to be thinking through why do we do what we do? And so I'm very grateful to them for bringing this discussion to the forefront, so that we can actually make our lives more meaningful, because that's what it's really about. I mean, it's not about making a living; it's about making a life. I mean, we are so much more than just than robots at the office. We should be realizing that we can actually be contributing much more than just creating a dollar.
Yeah.
Agree.
One of the network that we work with is entrepreneurs in Mongolia. We just finished a survey that 80 plus entrepreneurs filled out our survey. The result of the survey also showed that most businesses said, for their primary need is their lack of investment. The primary need is that their lack of good ideas of product and service. But underneath, I actually saw one thing, that is, most of these companies are very hard to scale, and they are not building their team. They basically don't have human capacity. 80% of these people filled out survey, their businesses are less than 2 or 3 people. So they're not really scaling in terms of human capacity, but also building this culture and value of these pieces. So if our audience wanted to continuously, not only through this podcast, but also continuously want to learn in this area, what are some resources in this topic area you recommend?
Besides Robert's books.
Yeah. Besides your book.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a shameless promotion there. But there's a lot of really good books out there in terms of how you can really grow as a leader. And I can. It's specifically, some of my favorite ones are, which ones would I like now? I'm trying to look at my shelf over here, which ones I like. I think that for us really to dive into how we can be better leaders, I think starting off with things like John Maxwell, anything that John Maxwell writes is great, because he talks about how everything rises and falls in leadership. I think that he really understands that we need to make sure that we are doing what's most important, and that is investing in people, helping them to become better than they are. Really, for us to be able to say, what are your goals and dreams? What do you want to be able to accomplish? How can I help you become a better employee? How can I help you move on to where you want to go next? That's going to be buy-in that people are going to understand and appreciate, and then be able to realize that you do have my best interest at heart, that you are interested in helping me become and grow. And so therefore that's going to earn more loyalty, because I realize that your purpose is to develop me more than it is to make a dollar. And because of that, I'm going to be more interested in helping you make a dollar, because of the fact that you're investing in me. And then therefore I'm going to be more interested in helping invest in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's also reflect one of the things that I kind of see among younger generation, particularly the millennial and Gen Z who are stepping into workforces. They want coaches. They want people, their leaders, to spend time coach them and mentor them, rather than just, hey, work for me, get these things done. They're higher demand of that, more relational input and growth that they are requesting from their bosses and supervisors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really, I think, where people need to move more into, in terms of not necessarily moving from we need to move away from a managing perspective and into more of a leading perspective, because we're not machines to be monitored. We're not. I mean, we are human beings to be developed. And so therefore, for us to realize that we all have potential within inside of us to become more than we currently are, we need to have other people help us pull that out of us. Instead of, if we're just being managed, we're trying to be fitted into a box. Instead, we need to be able to help people just uncover who they are, so that we're able to then better understand how they can become more of the person that they've been created to be.
Yeah, and what I'm also getting from what you've just explained too is value creation, right?
Yes.
Where you're creating value, not just to make the dollar, creating value for the client or for whoever you're servicing, whatever your business is for, but you're also creating value internally. You're creating value for your employees, you're creating value for your team and their lives. And I think you're right to say that we work to make a life, not a living. And then when we talk about value, it's really, are we adding value to their lives?
Yes.
And so I really like how you've really been able to conclude that from our discussion here. So if somebody, let's say, I think we talked a lot about leaders here too, but if, let's say, a young professional came up to you and said, tell me one thing that I can start doing today. What is one action item that I can start doing today to get me to become a better employee, a better leader? What would you tell them?
I'd probably say two things. The first thing I would say is listen. Learn how to listen. That is a lost art today, is really people, I'm not just saying, just listening to the point of just waiting to be able to respond. I mean, listening to understand, not to refute, not to judge, but to understand. If we can do that, then the world is your oyster. I mean, if you can really listen to somebody and hear where they're coming from, and just you're not looking to agree with them, but just to be able to understand them. People want to be affirmed in terms of their story. And if you're able to listen to people, I mean, if you're going to be a wealth advisor, let's say, if you're able to listen to people, wow, people will be lining up to be your clients. I mean, that's powerful, because you're affirming people in terms of their story. And the second thing I would say is spend time in self-reflection. I think it's so important for us to take time every day just to see, how self-aware am I, to be able to kind of figure out, what do I need to do differently in terms of my life? Am I the person that I want to be? What can I do? What can I do to change that? And so I do that every day. I spend about an hour every morning just really doing that. Now I do that in a also reading scripture and praying as well, but you don't have to. I mean, but having that opportunity to really self-reflect on who you are and where you're going, and really being able to understand what kind of person you want to become ultimately, and how are you on that journey. That's huge. And so that's another thing I would say that people could be doing to really become the kind of person they want to be.
Mm-hmm. So really understanding your purpose, right? Understand
Absolutely.
what your life purpose is and what you stand for and where you're going and how you're getting there. And then being able to listen to people around you. And I think the listening part strikes me as really good advice, especially for this day and era. I mean, for any era, but with everything going on right now, everyone's taking a side or debating over a range of topics. But obviously, with all the things happening in America here in the past month or so, we definitely do need a lot more listening, and trying understanding and empathy, like you mentioned. So it was really good advice.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, my last question for you, Robert, before we let you go, is tell us a little bit about your company. Transformational impact. What does it do, and how you serve your clients a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we help organizations make ideals actionable. That's what we do. So, and we do that in terms of really helping human flourishing is really what our focus is really trying to do. And in the organizational leadership concept, I mean, we do strategic planning, we do strategic branding, we do culture analysis, culture building, leadership coaching, leadership training, that kind of thing, to try to be able to build organizations to optimize their structure so that they can be able to become the best they can be, and really be able to operationalize their brand there at the nexus of leadership and brand and culture, so it becomes the best. So everything reinforces each other so that everything comes together to be the best it can be. So that's a little bit about what we do. So
awesome.
And we can find out more about us at transformationalimpactllc.com. So it's transformationalimpactllc.com.
And how can people find your books?
Yeah, you can find them. My books are on Amazon. You can find them there. You can also learn more about them. If you want to find out about Dear Boss, you can go to whatyouremployeeswishyouKnew.com. So that's whatyouremployeeswishyouKnew.com. And then Dear Employee, you can go to whatyourbosswishesyouKnew.com. So whatyourbosswishesyouKnew.com.
It's very convenient. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll be sure to probably link the books too and the resources that
in the show notes.
Yeah, and for the matter, you can find out more information about your purpose and also about operationalizing your brand and about really about active leadership is one thing I talked about as well. You can find all of that those as downloadable resources on our website. So
that's perfect.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you,
Robert. Thank you for spending time with us and sharing your wisdom, but also sharing about your books and finding through your organization. I'm sure this will help our audience and our listener to become a better leader and self-aware and understand what their employee, what the people they lead are asking, what kind of questions, what they're searching, but also really kind of not only lead themselves well, they can lead others and lead their organization well. Well, again, thanks again for joining our new episode of Unleash podcast. And thank you for joining this leadership journey and growing with us. See you next time.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Unleash podcast was brought to you by Asia Leadership Development Network. In this podcast, we will discuss topics related to leadership, personal development, family, mental and emotional health, business entrepreneurship, organizational and community leadership, and more. For a better tomorrow, we strive today. Thank you for joining us.